So closing into the BAF podcast, I am your host, Mike Lafferty, and we're here today with a drawing and chatting episode with Mr. Jacob Blackmon. Hey, Jacob.
Hello.
And before we go any further, that theme music assures you, gentle viewer, that you're indulging in a high production values podcast, a organic farm-to-table podcast, if you will. Only the finest quality here. And in the tradition of finest quality, we have a couple of great co-hosts. Darren Drader making his third or fourth appearance on the show. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here.
And Darren is a big name in RPGs. I shouldn't have to introduce him, but he's done a lot of work for... Who all of you worked for, Darren?
Oh, I've worked for a lot of people. I've worked for WotC, I've worked for Paizo, I've worked for Legendary Games, Bastion Press, you. I'm forgetting a bunch. Eisgrim Press recently. They're kickstarting a book, and I did the editing for it. So I can't even keep track of it all anymore.
Okay, but your best work, of course, was in the last year for Fading Go. So
I am pretty happy with that work. Yes, absolutely.
So I am too. And last but certainly not least is the Ghost Show boss, the man in the festive shirt, right over here, Christopher McGlothlin. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I've got 1 week of break left, and I've been spending that catching up on shows. Like I'm in the middle of Night Gallery season 2 on Blu-ray and Strange New Worlds. Good timing on my part.
Oh, sweet. So Jacob's going to draw for us. I suppose we should maybe set this up for any viewers. And hey, so we have some viewers. Thanks for joining us. Who aren't familiar with this show. How would you describe it to them there?
Well, how would I describe it? Take the original series, give it modern sets and special effects and better script writing and better acting, and go 7 years prior to the first season when Christopher Pike was commanding the Enterprise. And that's basically the setup. At this point, he knows that he has a fate that's coming up, that he's going to end up in that chair. And, it's kind of been weighing on him a little bit, and something he thinks about throughout the season. But that doesn't exactly overshadow anything that's going on, because it's a very episodic show.
Yeah, it's really feels like original Trek to me. Though I have heard some people facetiously call it Ted Lasso in space. I don't know how appropriate that is, but I can get what they're coming from, because Ted is very much a positive kind of father figure, and Pike is sort of the same while they're both wrestling with their own demons. But this is the first show that has felt like Trek to me since original Trek. I mean, I like Next Generation okay and whatnot, but didn't really have the vibe, at least for me. So yeah, that's Strange New World. And Jacob, you were going to entertain us by drawing art that's Trek related while we're having this conversation, right?
I am.
Okay.
People can chat and ask questions and get questions from the audience, from anyone who's listening to us. But otherwise, I'll be drawing on my pad, and we can watch that happen as we talk about Trek and all that.
Okay, well, let me know when you're ready to share, and I will put that out there.
Let me get that all set up.
So, Chris, you are an you're an old guy.
I am everything I do is old. It's okay. It's okay. I'm 53. It comes with the calendar.
I turned 50 just 2 months ago, so I'm right there with you. How are
next
you?
April.
Next April. All right. Old guys, unite.
Yep.
So how are you feeling about this show? Chris, do you have a favorite episode?
Well, I kind of binged this. I did the first 5 in a row, and then did the last 5. But even watching it pretty much just in 2 spurts, I was surprised how much I was looking forward to it. And I have sort of an internal conflict over the show in that I enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing it. I'm curious about where they're going in second too, but I'm wondering about my reasons for liking this show. Because I'm very, very, very down on 21st Century Entertainment, which is entirely memberberry driven. And I'm wondering do I love this show just because they finally made member berries in my flavor? You know, I feel like a bit of a hypocrite enjoying the fact that it's such a shout out to 20th century Trek. You know, I mean, I'm wondering, is it just legitimately good, or am I just responding well to am I like a shelter dog? It's like the first time in my life somebody's not hitting me, and I'm just enjoying. Hey, nobody's hitting me. Nobody's standing on my chest, thwarting my expectations.
Let me help you answer that question for yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
For me, my Trek was Next Generation, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager. I did watch TOS. I originally got into Star Trek because of Star Trek 2. That was what pulled me in the first place. But as far as my perspective was, original Trek was kind of that show that my uncles used to watch when I was like a tiny kid, and I didn't understand. So when I got a little bit older, then it was like that show my uncles used to watch when I was a tiny kid that I didn't understand, with really bad special effects compared to the other stuff I was watching. Talking about TOS, not the movies. So for me, since I derive most of my enjoyment from the 90s Trek, I'm seeing this, and it's not so much I'm getting nostalgia vibes out of it. It's that it's genuinely good. So that's my perspective. And that's kind of the perspective I've been seeing from a lot of other people online. You know, I'm not going to say that Star Trek has the most toxic fan community, because it doesn't. But there was a lot of complaining with Picard for reasons I don't really agree with for the most part. There's a ton of complaining about Discovery, again, for reasons I don't necessarily agree with. And then this one comes along, and it doesn't seem to matter who is talking about it. It seems to be universally loved. So I think they just hit the nail on the head with it.
Yeah, honestly, for me, Star Trek Strange New Worlds has been the first season of Star Trek where I have loved every episode.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single episode that I've watched and it's like, I really didn't care for that. No, because there are episodes in original series and Next Generation,
yep,
and all that. There's like, they really could have done a better job on that. I didn't think that way about a single episode in Strange New Worlds. They were all excellent for me.
Well, there is an elephant in the room. Let's discuss the one thing that people are talking about. They're not completely happy with. Kirk. Paul Wesley didn't do it for me, frankly. He didn't look like Kirk. He didn't sound like Kirk. He didn't act like Kirk. He wasn't even built like Kirk. I couldn't even imagine this guy getting into a fight.
Well, so, I will say this much. We have seen an alternate Kirk that never, well, at least hasn't yet gotten to command a Constitution class starship and has never met Spock. Mm-hmm. This inherently is not going to be our Kirk. Now, when we get to season 2, they still have the dodge that he hasn't yet become the Kirk that we know will make love to half the universe very, very shortly in timeline. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with this as a proto Kirk in the same way that I love Ethan Peck as a proto Spock. He's not quite Nimoy yet, and that's okay. That's exactly where he should be.
And the commenter Steve Jolly, hey Steve, says Anson Mount does a good job as Christopher Pike. Really fleshes out the character, and I have to agree fully with that. Yeah,
and yet also holds up. I think one of the real strengths of this is one of the virtues I will always accord to Strange New Worlds is it's the first Trek show we've gotten since Deep Space Nine that doesn't hate itself and doesn't clearly want to be something other than what it is. And I think part of that is rather than thwarting our expectations about Pike, this is palpably the guy that Jeffrey Hunter played back in 1964. There is a through line between those two individuals. Mm-hmm. They're fleshing him out marvelously, but there's never been a moment where I ever stopped thinking that this isn't the same guy that Hunter played back in '64.
I agree. Well, there are some obvious differences. Like you go back to the pilot, and it was a big deal that there were women on the bridge. There are a few other things, like when he was sitting here whining about his job to the doctor in the pilot. But
this is still a pilot that's still questioning himself and almost quit Starfleet again at the beginning of this series. You know, to me, there's the through lines are still there.
I guess that's true.
It's so rare to get two guys agreeing so completely about a major sci-fi property. I don't really know how to respond. So let's ask Jacob about his art. Jacob, let's talk tools of the trade for just a second.
Okay.
What kind of tablet and software are you using here?
I am using Photoshop for the drawing program, and I am utilizing a Wacom Cintiq 15 art tablet. It is one of their older art tablets. That's what I got. It was free, and I thank the person who gifted it to me.
Hey,
very cool.
Hey, when we get around to talking to season 2, would you do Vol? Only it's like Mike, and that could be like the symbol of like all our future Trek talks.
That would be fun. Okay, I will.
Who are you? You're over my head here, man. Who are you talking about?
The in the classic series, the absolute like red shirt carnage episode is this show called The Apple, and they go to yet another computer ruled planet, and the computer god is this big lizard head thing called Vol, and you get like 50 minutes of these Eden-esque space hippies talking about Vol is the one who puts the fruit on the trees and tells us when to make replacements with each other. So there you go. There you go. Just be a symbol of the esteem that we hold you in.
If you think I'm an asshole, you can just say so.
Comic book series.
No, I
love you. Care for what the comic book series did in that regard. They followed the trend from the second movie, Wrath of Khan, and they basically that Kirk never checked up on anything or told anyone in Starfleet to go, hey, we've done this thing. Maybe we should send some people to help this system out and help develop it now that they're on.
Oh yeah.
In the comic, they go back to the planet, and all the vegetation's dead because they didn't know how to take care of themselves, and they're having rampant space problems. They're running out of food. They're running out of water. The planet is just screwed because no one helped them develop a society after Kirk left. And I'm like, this isn't what Starfleet would do. They would have taken care of these people.
They addressed it a little bit in season 2 of Lower Decks. The captain talks about her frustration with seeing perfectly good societies go to seed just because Starfleet has a policy of some interference.
Okay, I once again, I really get tired of the Next Generation's take on the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is not supposed to be about no interference, period. It is supposed to be about not interfering with pre-space faring cultures that are not ready to deal with the concept of people from space. Because there is a spacefaring culture that Starfleet interacts with in the original series that are perfectly fine with the idea of people from space. The big giant Capellans from that one episode, I forget the name of it. They're the giant Norse people. Friday's Child. Thank you. But the Capellans were perfectly fine with space people, so they could interact with them, no problem.
But Next Generation did pretty much keep that. the thing that the society had to get past in order to be ready for contact was warp. If they could warp, then let's go say hi. And the problems they got into in Next Generation were things like, oh, hey, we're watching this primitive culture and we're not supposed to make ourselves known, and something happened, and now they worship Picard. Or similar situations like this where they kind of get entangled in these pre-warp civilizations accidentally.
Except that there's a couple of episodes where they're dealing with other planets that have warp travel, and they're not allowed to deal with the problems in their society or help them with like a meteor about to crash in their planet because of the first contact it hasn't happened yet. The prime directive prevents us from doing anything. It's like, that's not what the prime directive is. There's like 2 or 3 episodes where it happens.
I guess maybe it was a little more restrictive in the Next Gen era, but I don't find that to be hard to believe. I mean, at that point they'd had 200 years worth of experience in space. I'm sure that their idea of how the prime directive should work has evolved over time. Just like our interpretations of the U.S. Constitution are constantly changing and evolving and being reinterpreted.
Indeed, they are. Not to put too fine a point on it, but a lot of big reinterpretations of the U.S. Constitution here in the recent past.
Yeah,
so.
Out of the blue and unprecedented ones.
Yeah. So Jacob, what are you drawing, sir? This looks pretty cool.
I am drawing a very popular, at least to me, Star Trek species called the Tholians. They appeared on only a couple of episodes. They originally appeared in original series, an episode called the Tholian Web, and then you pretty much never hear about them for decades until an episode in Enterprise where they where in a flash sideways to the mirror universe, which it has its own explanation. The mirror version of Archer's Enterprise encounters Tholians, and in that you find out that because in the original series all you saw was his head, and here we go. You pretty much saw this.
Yep. A head obscured by smoke.
Yeah, and it's very obscured by smoke, and it was all digitized, and it was all these psychedelic colors, and you couldn't really tell what they were looking at.
Yeah, if you saw it at a later day, you're clearly going like, I want some of what the Tholians are on right now.
but the Tholian ships would have this thing where they spun a energy web around enemy ships to entrap them, and this would result in depowering them, because you could shoot at the energy web and all it would do would be absorb your energy and get more powerful. So anyway, Enterprise, the Enterprise series ran with this web and spider theme, and when we finally got to see Tholians in all their glory, they were these crystalline spider creatures that were just awesome looking. And I was really happy about that. Not only that, but
let's not forget that the interior of their ships were like an oven.
Yeah, they're crystalline spider creatures that are like super heated and magma, and so they're just this really creepy, utterly alien species. They cannot exist side by side with most other species, so they just pretty much do their own thing in their part of space.
They look like the best stage prop you didn't get to see on the Ziggy Stardust tour in the early 70s. Perfect for that era.
And regular commenter Sean Vera says, "Evening. Started a little late, been rebuilding my server. Nice artwork, Jacob. Well, thanks, Sean. Good to hear from you, sir."
Thank you.
And
So
I shared a couple of. Go ahead, sir.
Talk about Tholians. It's also worth mentioning that they're a big deal in some of the novels.
Okay.
The Vanguard series. by David Mack and Dayton Ward, and if I can't think of this guy, Kevin Gilmore. I was going to say it's going to be really embarrassing if I can't think of this guy's name because he's a friend on Facebook and we talk a lot. Anyway, anyway, they did the Vanguard series, which was they got into the background of the Tholians. They were in this region of space with the space station, with all new characters, except for the first book, which had the Enterprise in it. And this is original series timeline. And without giving too much away, Tholians were one of the really big deals this series, and that was probably one of the better Star Trek series to come along in the history of Star Trek books.
Very cool.
It's the franchise rule. Every Star Trek character gets a novel. Every Star Wars character gets a streaming series.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
So the guy who may have a spec script for the Greedo series.
Guido is just in a Han and Chewie miniseries. Actually, I think he's right now over at Marvel.
I heard about that.
Yeah. I want to like Marvel Star Trek quite a bit. That's just it can be so hit or miss. But
the Star Trek X-Men crossover kind of lets you know if you're really going to take what Marvel has in mind for Star Trek.
Star Trek is actually currently with IDW.
Oh, are they? Okay,
then.
then
It's Star Wars that is with Marvel, and
yeah,
that makes sense because they're all owned by Disney.
Yeah, part of the Big Mouse Collective.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's interesting stuff. And I just saw the trailer for Andor, which starts next month on Disney Plus.
Haven't watched that yet.
They don't give much away.
Uh-huh.
It's Caspian Andor. He's fighting the Empire, and there's some cool visuals. They don't give you any plot, so.
Unfortunately, here's where I have to be the downer, and I don't really give a fuck. Guess what? We know how Caspian Andor dies.
Oh, yeah.
So he'll survive any threat that comes to him in the show. Thus, there is no drama as to putting him in danger.
Now, sir.
And
sir.
I'm not done with my argument.
Okay.
And before he meets Jen Erso, he is one of those utter assholes who is I'm doing what is right because it's the greater good. And no matter how bad I do, it's for a good cause. Kind of dicks, which I hate those kind of characters.
You have strong feelings about this, and I acknowledge that. I will point out that I think Andor was pretty much just a French resistance stereotype translated into a Star Wars movie. And also, not to be a dick, but your argument about us knowing his fate so there's no drama, couldn't I make the same argument about Strange New Worlds, a series we all love?
Yes, you could.
Except they are alluding to a lot of things that may be saying he might be able to change his fate.
Honestly, I'm really hoping not. I'm really, and it's not that I don't love Anson Mount. It's not that I don't love Pike. It's just that to me, the thing that ultimately completely takes me out of Next Generation and completely takes me out of Discovery is they revolve around superhumans that are like nearly impossible to relate to. I mean, I know Gene Roddenberry was a utopian when he wasn't letting his horrible lawyer throw out gay slurs and illegally rewrite scripts, that he believed the world was going to be this awesome paradise in the galaxy and all that. And I just, for me, that's a bit of a tough watch and always has been. And Discovery is basically, and here's another amazing thing about Michelle Burnham, and that's even more off-putting. The message I took away from the season finale of Strange New Worlds is that you can be a hero even if all you do is pave the way for other heroes. And again, this is just my perspective. I've been in the classroom for 27 years. That kind of spoke to me that, they will eventually shovel dirt on me, and I will have spent years of my life writing hall passes. And, the real amazing work will be done by the people that I've taught, God willing, rather than so much what I've done myself. But, Pike's acceptance of the fact that, his job is to be good and pave the way for other good people. That's just so wonderfully antithetical to what Trek has been about. And as much as I love Deep Space Nine, even that is a show that kind of revolves around a guy who is this society's, intergalactic messiah.
Yep.
Deep Space Nine handles it better, but it's still a premise that isn't automatically easy to relate to. And to me, there's no more Star Trek thing you could do than to turn the stories around and move them back in the direction of more humble, flawed people with more relatable problems and situations. Just my opinion.
And interesting aside, Sean Ver mentions that talking about what the mouse owes, word has it that they are in talks to get Doctor Who on Disney Plus.
Huh. Weird.
And we'll find out that Disney had the missing episodes all this time. I've got your Dalek master plan right here. We've had it all along.
So just to bring this up, does anyone hear the fun announcement they made at San Diego Comic-Con yesterday about
Lower Decks?
Star Trek?
About Lower Decks?
I heard some.
Yeah.
I did, and I know Lower Decks is a controversial thing to me, but to me that's perfect, because the reason that I loved Lower Decks way more than I ever thought I would isn't that it's the funniest thing on TV. It's not fall down funny. It's got its moments, but it's just that it posits that the next generation future has this limited other class of unrelatable subhumans like Picard. All right, give me a thumbnail sketch of Picard. He's good at everything and has succeeded at everything he's ever tried in his life. Okay, but there's this like very thin upper crust of superhumans, and below that, it's just a bunch of barely functioning people who arguably maybe shouldn't be in their jobs, that are just holding the rest of it together with spit, dumb luck, and baling wire. And it's like, oh my god, I finally believe in the next gen universe.
Well, it's the thing that they tend not to bring up in like original series. It's like, where are all the enlisted personnel? Because you don't have officers scrub toilets.
This is Star Trek, so they've got they use transporter technology to clean the toilets. They don't vacuum the floor. Again, it's transporter technology.
Makes it very easy to track a starship, doesn't it?
What's that?
Makes it very easy to track a starship, right?
No, the original series has plenty of yeomans. There's still some crap jobs out there, and there's still some people who get stuck doing them.
Do you guys read Red Shirts by John Scalzi?
No.
Oh, okay. Came out, 10 years ago, maybe. 2012, almost exactly 10 years ago. It won. What did it win? It won some awards. And Hugo. It won the Hugo. And it is basically Guildenstein and Rosencrantz set in Star Trek.
Solid take.
Yeah, it's they're I agree with you, Sean Verrett. It is a fun read. I just listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, because everything is these days. And
God.
It's good. It's entertaining. Scalzi's a quality writer. But yeah, when Lower Decks came out, a lot of people hit him up and they're like, "Hey, they're stealing your idea, right?" And he's like, "I don't own the concept of enlisted personnel on a starship, commenting wryly on the goings on around them." But it's a fun book because where Lower Decks, you got the Mariner character who's kind of like a nicer version of Rick from Rick and Morty. And she occasionally breaks the fourth wall very slyly and then goes right back into the plot and makes a lot of jokes about continuity. In John Scalzi's book, they realize they're in a television show, and that there's a couple of lampshades hung on some of the. It's mainly talking about next generation. Some of the plots that you see over and over, and the way the enlisted people develop survival strategies whenever officers are around them, so they don't get sucked into the narrative. And that was the most entertaining part for me. And of course, it has to have a plot because it's a novel. So, in the third act of the book, they figure out a way to go back to 20th century California and change the story so they all get to live. But
so when they said there's going to be a crossover between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, did they actually say which show it was going to be?
Specifically for Strange New Worlds.
The people that normally voice the two Lower Decks characters are going to be there in live action.
That's what I thought, because I did notice the voice actors look so much like their characters they could totally play them.
Okay,
I am sure that was done on purpose.
I'm sure.
Yes,
Mysticata. Okay, this is news to me. I hadn't heard about this. I heard about the DS9 crossover. They're going to have Strange New Worlds crossover with Lower Decks?
Strange New Worlds is crossing over with Lower Decks.
Yes.
So time travel fuckery. Okay.
It'd have to be, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't hear about the DS9. What's going on there?
Let me dig it up again.
All I read was a quote that saying like that they would not revisit those characters unless they had good reason to.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounded like it. Don't call us, we'll call you.
I've got the trailer for Lower Decks, and this article on Giant Freaking Robot says that it might. You guys want to watch this trailer real fast?
Your show.
It's my show. All right. Let me pull it up. Hang on. Just 1 second.
And not get fired.
Totally not a copyright violation.
Yeah, you're right. They always seem to ding me on that. Well, let's just watch. Maybe if we watch it with the sound off.
Whenever we have tornado drills at school, our first instructions tell the students to be quiet, and I always throw in that way the tornado will not hear us and go elsewhere.
I am not seeing anything that looks like DS9 so far.
They did have Cisco's, the restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose that could be the crossover right there. There's that one Klingon with one eye.
Yeah.
Martok?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I got nothing here, guys. I'm going to go back to Jacob before YouTube starts screaming at me.
Well, I actually had some other stuff to talk about the show if you want.
Please go ahead.
Well, I posted my review of it online, and it's Moby Dick length, and I was surprised I still got like 12 likes on it. So it's always good. It's always good when people are willing to follow you when you're writing your equivalent of Jazz Odyssey, But to me, they always say you can't write a review without posting some reservations, and I will freely admit that these do not rise above the level of quibbles. And these days, good Lord, when you're just quibbling about a show, I see where that they want to be at least a slightly modern show and having some continuing plot lines. And and certainly no Deep Space Nine, no Star Trek show ever did those better. But it's very few of them have done it well since. I don't think necessarily all of them have stuck their continuing plot lines all that well. Like the whole thing with Mbinga's daughter, that was supposed to have the big emotional payoff. It's like, is episode 8 a little soon to be doing this? I'm not sure I would have done it. I thought so too. And also, I don't think that they helped by portraying her as like the most energetic, precocious, dying kid ever. Now, I mean, you don't have to show her coughing up like reams of blood, but could we have her cough once to show, it's just, I think they could have done a slightly better job of selling the fact that she's dying. Not that I like to see children suffer. It's just that if you're going to wring any drama out of that, that's kind of what you have to do there.
Well, we already had the children suffering episode, and it was bad.
Yeah.
It was good, but it was, that was a heart-wrenching one. So we're really going to do another one? I mean,
well, if you're going to have the payoff that they clearly want to have in episode 8, I think you need a little more than what you got, which is why I wouldn't have done it in episode 8. Just and the other thing is, and I feel very torn about this, is one of my favorite characters is Dr. Mbenga. But of all the people that you can look at and see, oh yeah, that I can see why this character is eventually going to become the guy in the menagerie, and that's we see where our hero got started. It's really kind of hard to connect the dots between this Mbenga and the Booker Bradshaw version that slaps the taste out of Nimoy's mouth in Private Little War. And there's a part of me that just kind of wishes that like they'll say that like the Booker Bradshaw version is like his nephew or his son or something. Granted, that's a deep dive. It's freely a quibble. And again, if that goes unresolved, I will not complain a bit. It's just that's one that and sometime in the next 10 years, Chief Kyle is going to get taller and beefier and blonder and more British.
Completely no longer Asian too.
Yeah. But again, if that's the kind of thing you're worrying about, go to bed, old man. I'm telling myself to shut up.
I agree.
So, what did you guys think about the Serene Squall episode?
Oh,
with Dr. Espen.
Oh,
Pirates.
with apparently the big bad, the pirate lady.
The pirate lady, yeah.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
I had mixed feelings about it. I thought it was a great performance, but it's like, to be a great Trek villain, you need to be about a 2 on the Marvel Cinematic Universe villain scale, and she was at a 6.
Yeah.
That's a valid critique.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. I thought the Pike stuff in that episode was kind of silly. Especially the bit at the end where he's taking control of the ship and he's literally sitting here at a wheel, doing this. So that bit was a little bit silly. His plan was to get these people to overthrow their captain. It went a little too smoothly, I think, and they didn't really show enough of it. But that wasn't really the focus of the episode, obviously.
Yeah.
So it. I thought it was a fun episode. I didn't think it was a great episode, but I thought it was a fun episode.
And sometimes you don't like stuff at first blush, but then you have to take it in context. Like, I had very, very, very mixed feelings about the whole Burnham mutiny thing in the Discovery pilot. And then I took a deep breath and said, yeah, I mean, Starship personnel don't mutiny except for, the Tholian Web, the Omega Glory.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of listed off this long history of starship commanders just going completely nuts for less reasons than that. Like, all right, fair cop. And as hesitant as I was about the whole pirate escape thing, I remember this is the area where you can escape from your captors, but by inventing a fake card game on the fly. So.
American folk hero John Dillinger once escaped from a prison in my home state of Indiana with a gun allegedly carved out of soap and wood.
I've done the same thing to get out of faculty meetings. It works.
Honestly, the thing is, I know a lot of people are talking about how this show is supposed to be it's a prequel. But honestly, I'm looking at Strange New Worlds as the reboot we were promised with Abrams' Trek, but we're actually getting with Strange New Worlds because there are Gorns. We know more about Gorns, and despite the fact that in the original series that was supposed to be the first time we ever encountered Gorns. Secondly, Vulcans. We know a lot about Vulcans. And everyone knows about, Spock's family and Vulcan history and Vulcan practices, unlike original series where they knew jack shit about Vulcans. I'm sorry, Vulcans were one of the species that founded the Federation. How do you know so little about their culture?
And those are just little retcons. I mean, people are making a big deal out of that. A lot of those points you just brought up, people are making a big deal out of it. But, there's going to be retcons. I don't know. You look at, I hate to even bring it up because it was terrible, but you look at Nemesis, and the whole premise behind Nemesis was that they cloned Picard, and the Romulans cloned Picard and raised him in secret. And if you actually look at Tom Hardy's age in the movie, he would have had to have been cloned prior to the beginning of Next Generation, which was during a period of about 100 years where the Federation and the Romulans had no contact whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the premise of that movie doesn't add up. It was a terrible movie anyway, so that's fine with me. But
well, they were trying to remake Wrath of Khan.
I know. They've tried to remake Wrath of Khan too many times now. It didn't work with Into Darkness either. That was terrible.
It's kind of like the Die Hard of
okay. Speaking to the Vulcan thing, okay. Enterprise, love it or hate it, or just go, oh, you poor thing, every time you think about it. Enterprise did firmly establish that the Earth-Vulcan relationship was, it had some serious speed bumps on the road, including some flat-out, good old-fashioned Earth racism against the Vulcans.
Mm-hmm.
And if by the time of Strange New Worlds, you're living in a situation that, the Federation always tends to be the United States of America in space. If you compare that to the fact that, there are people in the United States now who can tell you everything there is to know about Middle Eastern culture, all of the cultural ticks and cues and things like that, with a healthy chunk of the population who can only think of oil and terrorism.
Yep.
I mean, and the thing is, I mean, if it's one thing that I think supports that is we live in an age where you can find out anything you want to know in under a second. It's just most of us never bother to look. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you could learn so much about Vulcan culture, but you just have chosen not to, again, analogous to our own time and place. And I will say this much: if about Strange New World being some kind of Abrams-esque reboot, that's a possibility, but I think if they do it that way, there could be potential trouble. Because why did Enterprise fail? It desperately did not want to be Enterprise. It was set in the past, but it wanted to talk about the Borg and the Ferengi and do next generation type stories.
Well, let's be honest about Enterprise. Enterprise is a show they shouldn't have made.
Exactly.
The reason they made it was because Berman hated the continuity so much because he couldn't keep it straight in his own head. Yeah. He figured we'll go back into the past, and that way we don't have to worry about it. So anyway, they totally they had 3 shows worth of continuity plus the movies they had up to that point, and they completely abandoned it in favor of this prequel that nobody asked for.
Yep.
So I agree with you. That was a show nobody wanted whatsoever, and that's the reason it failed ultimately. Although Voyager's ratings had already been kind of going in the toilet prior to the failure of Enterprise, so it's not like it came out of the blue.
Yeah, but why bother doing a Pike show, especially ones that ended with a note for note in places redoing of Balance of Terror? Why go in the past if you have no interest in anything related to that past?
Well, I hate to be the one who says this because it's the least interesting take possible, but Paramount has a streaming service. And Paramount wants to mine that sweet Trek fan base for all they can. And the best way to do that is to grow the fan base, to keep them happy and bring in more fans. And a show like Strange New Worlds, good God, they manage to keep the older fans happy while bringing in new fans. They pull off the weirdest. It's gonna. I haven't seen the numbers. It's streaming, so you don't. But it's so universally acclaimed. I would assume it did.
If it's doing better than Discovery simply because it isn't rip your eyeballs out of your skull terrible, I will accept that. But I mean, I'm keenly cognizant of like the closer you are to being a 50-year-old guy that actually had the Spock helmet with the siren on top. The closer you are to that seems to equate you being crazier about Strange New Worlds.
I see a lot of love for it on Twitter, but that could just reflect who I'm following as opposed to people actually feeling way about it.
Let's also keep in mind the fact that before they announced Strange New Worlds is going to series, there is this massive fan petition to have a Captain Pike show due to the strength of Anson Mount's presence and his acting on second season of Discovery. So there was a demand for this show. It's not like this is an unasked for prequel. Yeah. This is something people actually wanted to see and are interested in. And frankly, I'm more invested with Picard in terms of the timeline, maybe not in terms of the storyline. But it's like I want to see what happens to these characters. That was my Star Trek, Next Generation. So that's where I'm invested. But even so, I'm thrilled with Strange New Worlds. I think it's amazing, So I think part of it is just that they're doing a really good job with it, and that the fans wanted it, and apparently they had actually thought about doing it even before the fans jumped in and said, "Let's do it." Mm-hmm. So,
Darren, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a question here, because I just. It's not that I exclude these people from my life or anything like that. It's just it's rare for me to meet somebody that would actually come out and say that Next Gen is your number one favorite show. And again, I'm not disrespecting your opinion. It's a rare opportunity for me to ask this question to about Picard.
Sure.
Okay. My takeaway from season 1 of Picard is, and I will see how accurate you think this is or isn't. And if it isn't, please tell me. But to me, Picard feels like let's take the Next Gen cast and put them in more of a Deep Space Nine kind of universe.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
A little more darker and a little more fallible Federation than we ever really got on their show.
And well, I mean, one of the things you got to realize is that Next Generation was kind of like the Federation at its pinnacle. Maybe there will be another pinnacle later, but the Dominion War really fucked up the Federation. And so after the Dominion War, things were, and I'm reading a lot into this, but I mean, a lot of this stuff is not strictly canon, but it's definitely my interpretation here. So they went through a period where they had to rebuild Starfleet. They had all kinds of things that were broken after the Dominion War. It was a major freaking war that they could have lost. They almost did lose. So that being the case, the Federation probably had to go into sort of this rebuilding period where, things weren't as perfect. And our characters, they're still there. They're still the same characters, but the world around them has changed. And, on top of that, you also look at Picard himself, and, he's dealing with, the fact that he's aging and he's dying and he's got guilt about Data. And these are a lot of, heavy issues that he wasn't really carrying around in the series or the movies. So they did kind of go down a darker path, which I think is perfectly fine. Yeah. I'm not looking forward to any of them dying in season 3, but it's coming. So
I have to admit, I'm not the world's biggest Next Gen fan, but when it was basically pitched to me, Picard is old and no longer gives a fuck, I'm in.
Well, My personal feeling, my take on Picard as a character, not the show.
Yeah.
I feel like Picard should have been assimilated by the Borg, and Riker should have taken over the show at that point.
Whoa.
Now, a lot of people are going to look at me and say, "The fuck, man!" But that has always been.
I
That's
think
always
that
been my
would have been a
position.
huge freaking twist that no one would have saw coming, and would have been amazing. Because
And
then
I
it's
think Riker
all
would have
about
been a great
like
lead.
there are consequences to things.
Mhm.
That would have been quite a switch for that show.
Mhm.
Oh, speaking of twists and deaths, how we feel about Himmer dying?
Oh, Hammer.
I was waiting for you guys to bring this up just because I could say, now it's hammer time. Please proceed.
Okay, no problems with how it was handled, but just let me throw this out for discussion. Too soon? That was what, episode 9?
Yeah, I think so.
Too soon?
Okay, I have some issues.
Go ahead, please.
I like the character. I thought they gave him a good send off. It might have been a little soon because we never really got attached to him.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's the fact that he died in an episode that was basically a ripoff of Aliens
And Predator.
Yeah, so that episode didn't have the most originality to it. It was still fun to watch, but I guess it's better than getting killed by a big pile of tar.
Scaffolding.
Yeah, scaffolding.
I thought it was well handled and not the greatest episode ever, but it may have been a little soon for me. That was the worst I could say about it.
Yeah, so I mean, what are they doing? Are they making way for Scotty? Is that why they did that? I mean, they could have given us a few years, but now what we're hearing from the showrunners is it's not even going to be Scotty. It's going to be Chief Engineer number 2. You know.
You know, that was one of the things that initially disappointed me about this is I was kind of hoping that they might bring back more people from the cage and do a better job of them.
Like Boyce.
I love Boyce because it's rare that you see a recurring character of that vintage, you know, like a really old guy. And again, I love Mbenga. I don't begrudge them that choice, but I just thought it would have been interesting. Like what's Starfleet like when you know, like when you can hurt yourself getting out of bed in the morning, you know, that would have been a fresh perspective. But yeah. But but as far as I tell you another thing the best thing I could ever possibly say about New Trek, I'll just remind you of this is one of the great blessings of basic cable is that I get heroes and icons, and from 8 till 1 in the morning I get classic show, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise all in a row. And so I wind up going back and seeing some of the classic episodes on the other side of some of the new treks, and the way that it changes some of that, like the beginning of Errand of Mercy, where Kirk has this really quick conversation with Spock. Well, we're at war with the Klingons again. That is a whole other scene after Discovery season 1.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I just went about a month ago, rewatched Amok Time. And like, man, when you really see how deep that knife goes into Spock's heart, which is right here. Yeah. You know, T'Pring, you see how dirty T'Pring done did him. Woo. Yeah. You know, it's amazing how much this is it's making you see these 50 or 60-year-old shows in a whole new light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've been interested by the T'Pring stuff myself, mainly because you know how it's going to end. You know, you know that it's not going to end well. And they're still making her kind of a major supporting character anyway, and you kind of want to hate her from the beginning.
Uh, yeah, well, but Spock looks like much less of a. Well, I'm sorry, my film noir background. He looks like much less of a sap now in this 50-year-old TV show, having seen the relationship that they used to have leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so well done, Strange New World.
I don't know, and the chapel thing, the chapel Spock thing.
Yeah,
I think it was the beginning of a muck time where she goes and just tries to bring him some food because he's not feeling well, and he throws it at her. They kind of allude to a relationship in the original series, but you don't really see it. And so here you're actually getting to see her as a major character and their interactions, and that's a lot of fun, I think.
It was lentil soup.
Plumbing soup. Yes.
Yeah, that was his favorite food, and I don't know why I remember that from the original series, but yeah.
My wife and I were watching it, watched it together, and I was sitting there trying to think about how different it is to see Nurse Chapel out in the hall, like brawling with people, and Uhura being like this proactive character. And I was thinking, like, well, that could be a little hard to square with the original show. And I'm thinking, I know it isn't. They spend like 10 years with Picard, with Pike being put in these incredibly dangerous situations. So by the time Kirk takes over, I'm staying on the ship. I'm done. I did my time. Send Ensign Jones over there. He hasn't been off the ship in a while.
If you need another communications officer, there's this Cation that works for me. Send her. send the kitty. Hey, you gotta have Marissa in there sometime.
That's a deep cut, Jacob. That's a deep cut.
Hey, I was talking to someone about the animated series a while ago and how much I loved it because there were more aliens on the crew
because they can afford them.
You got to see the communications officer. You got to see the Doan navigator. So yeah, it's just.
Let's not forget the doctor in Lower Decks is Cation.
Yes, yes, and they don't all sound like James Doohan.
Yeah,
love you, Jimmy.
So the Tholian here is finished.
What's awesome?
Thank you.
Awesome and fast, unbelievable.
That is really cool. And if you like Jacob's work, guess what? You can help him out with that. Patreon.com/Jacob Blackmon. Jacob produces. Jacob, why don't you tell us what you produce there?
I produce illustrations. I showcase illustrations on there that I do for commission for various people, including RPG commissions that I get from different companies. I also have a specific $20 level that people can sign up for, and any art that I just happen to do for the fun of it on my own that's not commissioned by anyone goes up on there as stock art, and each month I compile a stock art document and provide it for my $20 supporters. So they can use that stock art with a license for books or magazines or RPG products or any other thing that they want to put that art into.
Yeah, nice. I'm a backer. Encourage everyone else to back. And once again, that's patreon.com/Jacob Blackmon. So check it out. All the cool kids are. You are cool, right?
Gosh, I hope so. I would like to think I'm vaguely popular, but then I remember that a piece of my art was used for the most circulated fireball themed meme on the internet.
Wow.
Did you see some money from that, Jacob?
It's a meme, so no. I haven't even received any popularity from it because I can't go around saying, "Hey, that was done by me" everywhere.
The guy who does Brad Randall does Bork's memes. Tabletop RPG memes with a little sandwich in the corner of the meme. Did them for a few years, and if you remember during the recent protests a few years back, he had a meme on the main picture was police attacking protesters, and the words were, when one member of the party is attacked, we all roll initiative. And that went viral, got put onto T-shirts, got spray painted onto riot shields. Really, he had to have a conversation with the feds. Retweeted thousands of times. And I'm like, "You see any money from that?" He's like, "Nah, man, you don't get money from memes."
Yeah.
Hey, so I got a Star Trek meme I've been trying to get circulated and have take off, and so far has failed to. It is for when somebody has done a ridiculous Photoshop that's just beyond the pale, or something, and it's got the Federation president from Star Trek VI that was played by Eric Foreman's father,
Kurtwood Smith.
Yes, and he goes, and the meme is, "Let us redefine progress to mean that just because we can do a thing, it does not necessarily mean we must do that thing."
Nice. If you want to share that, I will be happy to put that up on the. Oh wait, Jacob, you have a link here. Is that meme you're talking about, Jacob?
That's the meme I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. Hey, did you guys see the guy who did the? That is pretty cool, Jacob.
Arrow may have your name on it, but a fireball is dressed to whom it may concern. When that came out, that was just everywhere 4 years ago.
I've never actually seen that one before. It's cool,
this was a piece of art I did for Adventure Week games. So
that is pretty cool.
Then it got used for a fireball meme. No fame whatsoever. Yeah.
Did you guys know that there is someone who is apparently very talented, and he is doing the old Star Trek animation style for clips from modern shows? You've seen this?
Yes, I've seen that. It's delightful.
His Voyager one just killed me. The ending of that was one of the purest laughs I've gotten all year.
For viewers who don't know, could you set up which exact infamous Voyager episode that was, Chris?
It was the one so terrible even the people who wrote it pretend it didn't happen. It's the one where they break the warp-in barrier and Tom Paris becomes some sort of Cronenbergian body horror, kidnaps Janeway, and they turn into lizards and have lizard babies.
Yep.
And no one at any point in the process just said, "Wait a minute."
that's kind of the Voyager equivalent of Sub Rosa.
Considering, I would like to say 2/3 of Voyager never happens, because it's either an alternate timeline, or they reverse time, or it happened in an alternate dimension, or it was a transporter accident, or it was a holodeck episode. Practically
transporter accidents actually do happen.
2/3 of Voyager never happened. I was honestly making jokes with my friends towards the end of Voyager, saying, "You know what's going to happen? The very end of Voyager is they're going to be them limping back to Earth, however many decades it's going to be in the future, and then old Janeway is going to use some time travel bullshit to make sure that they never get stuck in the Delta Quadrant to begin with, and thus the whole show never happens at all."
They did do a tongue-in-cheek episode of Voyager where the temporal police were trying to track down Janeway. Or do you remember this one? They're sending temporal agents onto the Voyager to try to, I forget, punish her or something, capture them, whatever.
I do recall that one.
It's the guy who played D-Day in Animal House, who's trying to hunt her down. He's coming back now.
And Sean Vera points out that Voyager wanted to be more a time tunnel than Lost in Space. I think we can agree with that.
It didn't want to be Voyager, which was always its fundamental problem.
I agree.
I was reading a piece by Roger Ebert. And Roger Ebert, God bless him, once defined a bad movie as one where you would rather watch the cast having lunch together than the actual film. And knowing like the real life, like Joan Crawford versus Betty Davis levels of hatred that Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan had for each other, and the running battle between Robert Beltran and the writing staff, I think I would rather watch like a docudrama about the making of that show than I would most of the episodes.
I'd watch that.
Absolutely.
It's I would agree. Some of the most interesting Trek stories I've read in the last few years have come out of Voyager. Just behind the scenes stuff, like what you mentioned, or poor Henry Kim. He deserved better. So, anyway.
I was chatting with somebody last night. I heard a story about him that I had never heard before. Apparently, they were deep into the production of the series before he had to pull them aside and say, "You realize Kim is Korean and not Chinese, right?" Because in the mind of the writing staff, no separation there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Which
Chakotay's background was extremely problematic.
And I'm sure you know the story about the big cock up there.
Yes.
Yeah. For those of you who may not know it, they brought in an expert on Native American studies that had been exposed as a fraud like 5 years before, but apparently the Voyager people never got the memo. So they based him off a lot of bullshit that this guy shoveled out, and it's the reason why Chakotay really, at best he is a member of tribe who has, every belief that a white person thinks that a Native American would have.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, So for the
Stereotype.
Yeah. I had to wade in an essay on this whole argument about how woke Star Trek has been, and my conclusion was imperfectly so. And that was kind of one of my arguments in favor of not as woke as we might have wanted it to be, but generally with its heart in the right place.
Women couldn't be captains, apparently.
Who knew? Right? Who knew, right?
And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the very last episode of the original series, that was the plot point. A woman should have been a captain, but she took over Kirk's body, and there's some hijinks.
I think they needed to point out that woman couldn't be a captain because the way she...
Yeah.
You don't understand! I'm the captain! Listen to me! That woman couldn't be captain. She personally could not pass the psychological test because she was too emotional.
I like that interpretation.
Yeah. Well, two quick things about that one. First of all, as bad as that episode is, I've always been amazed at that actress Sandra Smith when she's playing Shatner in her body. I always thought her Shatner was pretty solid. Maybe just me. I always liked her as Shatner. The screaming hysterical crazy woman, not so much. And okay, here you go. Little known fact came out next time you see that episode. Shatner was doing that episode despite the fact that he had the flu and his temperature was so far over 100, his makeup was melting off between takes.
Wow.
And apparently the scene where he picks up Janice Lester, they had to do like 8 takes on that for some reason while Shatner is kind of standing there dying. And in the middle of all this, true documented story, Gene Roddenberry makes a rare appearance on the set to tell Shatner that the next planned episode that Shatner was going to direct is not going to happen because NBC has decided to cancel the show. And right there with Roddenberry, who Roddenberry is giving a personalized tour of the set, O.J. Simpson. What a weird scene.
That is.
Yeah.
Sean Vera has more behind the scenes stuff in the comments. He says, my cousin is a cameraman in Vancouver. He's always stated some of the worst TV shows have been the best to work on. Worked a season on Viper. Car show was a blast, even if it was a really stupid show.
I vaguely remember Viper.
It's funny. We back in the early days of the internet, back before I was unceremoniously thrown out of the game industry, I got to be privy to a chat with a bunch of game designers. We're talking about pursuing opportunities outside of game writing in this amazing, crazy world where you might not get beaten like a rented mule. And one guy had done some TV writing and was talking about this. Viper was on like 98, 99, something like that. Was talking about how he sold one script of Viper and made $40,000 for it in like $1998.
Mhm.
And, you know, I mean, this was way before video was a reliable thing. You could still hear Jaws hitting the ground. 40 grand for one bit of writing, and they didn't plagiarize you or rewrite it behind you. Even if they rewrote it behind your back, they left your name on it.
I was in a writing group with a screenwriter. I won't name drop him on this show, but he's done one or two movies you might have heard of in the late 90s. At the time, my thing was doing stand-up and writing short stories. And he was like, dude, what are you doing, man? There's no glory in writing short stories. You get to write some story shows in a magazine, 12 people read it, and 6 of them complain about it. You write a script, even a bad movie script that gets made or doesn't get made, that's $60,000 for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're killing yourself for nothing here. And I was like, well, you might have a point. Hey, what's up? Punishment 90, good to see you, sir. We were just watching Jacob draw a Tholian, and we were talking about Star Trek, and we were getting ready to wrap up. But it's good to see you, Punishment, and hope we get you on the game on Mondays.
Skull.
All right, guys. And
any last Star Trek discussions or insights before we log out?
I am reining myself in because I could make stupid jokes about Star Trek for hours and hours.
I am also. I could probably keep going on forever.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that the guy that gave us Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, and the 98 Lost in Space, and a Transformers movie would be the architect of this?
Fair enough. All right, Jacob. Always a pleasure to see you do art. Let's do one maybe next month. Do this same kind of, I don't know, a different theme, something else. Maybe Transformers. Maybe.
I'm sure we can think of something.
All right, cool. Well, hey, folks, thanks for checking out the BAMF podcast, our late night art and draw show with Jacob Blackmon. Once again, patreon.com/Jacob Blackmon. Support Jacob. He's a good guy. He needs to buy sandwiches. So support him.
Do.
And we will catch you next time on the BAMF podcast.